This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast, with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean, the CRM Hobbit Tabor.
This episode of CRM Audio is sponsored by Kingswaysoft. Their SSIS integration toolkit comes from lessons that they learned from working on many large-scale CRM data integration projects. Kingswaysoft has adapters for the entire Dynamics family, including CRM, GP, AX, SL, Nav, and also Dynamics Marketing, Parature, and non-dynamic sources like Salesforce.com, Oracle, QuickBooks, and online cloud storage like OneDrive and Dropbox. Kingswaysoft brings you cost-effective, codeless integration development with unparalleled performance. Compared with other CRM integration options, they provide more features for a lower price. You can download a free trial from Kingswaysoft.com. That's KINGSWAYSOFT.com. We thank Kingswaysoft for their support of CRM Audio.
Well, I've been spending a good chunk of time in the past few weeks working on research for a Field 1 implementation. And one of the big pressing questions I had was how well integrated is it into the service scheduling that comes core, with the core product of CRM. What I found was, while it does have dependencies on the service and service activity entities, the scheduling itself seems to be avoiding the core CRM scheduling engine, which is fantastic for my tastes. And what I'm finding is it's a rather intuitive, easy to use user interface that really allows either manual scheduling or scheduling via a scheduling assistant for those field service organizations to really maximize that time in there. So even if you have someone like in a contact center or something like that, they could easily schedule a field service agent to a call.
Give us a background. What kind of company are you implementing it at? What do they do?
It's a manufacturing company that implements refrigeration units, essentially. My implementation is a little unique because Field 1 isn't the main field service solution. What we're doing is we're leveraging the Field 1 functionality to allow the folks in the contact center and the bulk of the CRM users to get the old saying, the 360 view within CRM. We're trying to leverage the Field 1 functionality to allow them to see what they need to see in CRM and not have to hop out of CRM to go to their legacy field service app. And then we're going to tie the Field 1 functionality together with their legacy field service app through integration to allow that to be seamless to the CRM user. But they'll have all of the information that they need, statuses, notes, updates, products, services, who's tasked to it, and potentially scheduling as well, all in CRM, which will be pretty great.
So explain this to me, Captain Field Service. Field 1, I understand a version of it comes with CRM Online. Is there a additional functionality that you pay extra for, or how is that licensed?
Well, what I've seen, what I've been able to research is there's some additional functionality, and there's a totally different solution for on-premises. There are some additional features and functions in terms of mobile. Field 1 mobile client is essentially built off the Resco CRM mobile. I've enabled some of the entities in the native mobile app, and it appears, but it doesn't really do all the functions that the customized mobile app does. I believe there's an extra license fee for that, but I haven't really dug into too much into the licensing aspects. I'm really trying to understand the architecture and what we can modify and what we can't, and what we can hide and what we can't.
Well, that sounds nice to have an intuitive easy to use service module. Who'd ever thought that?
Yeah, and there's actually drag and drop functionality, which is
Wait,
amazing.
the standard service module has drag and drop.
No, it doesn't.
You can drag and drop stuff.
unless it's dragging your laptop to another location, dropping
And
it
dropping it on the floor?
in furious anger on the floor. Yeah.
Sean, can I ask you,
Yeah.
why you came to conclusion that the scheduler doesn't use built-in scheduling engine? Because I was under the impression that it actually does.
Well, in like I said, this is from my initial research to this point. I haven't seen to where it's leveraging that. It looks like there's work order scheduling objects in the solution and plugins that are scheduling that on its own.
Okay.
I haven't seen where it's using the scheduling engine.
The mobile, the additional module that comes not as an additional solution, as I understand it, will be paid for solution. One of the features is that not only it enables the mobile force, it also solves the travel and salesman problem. So it does some route optimization and things like that. That's my understanding what it's going to include.
Yeah, it'll look into, drive time, distance. It goes into that level of detail.
Traffic reports?
Well, it goes out to Bing and looks at that kind of thing and gives you drive time, distance. Yeah. So there's some pretty slick functionality within the solution, but I believe that is the more advanced functionality. And plus with the mobile solution, there's IVR capability that you can use to where you'll get automated messaging when you are assigned something if you're a field tech. So I have to do a little more digging on that, but
okay.
Is
preview available as usual, North America only?
Unfortunately, yes.
That's the extent of the whole world to us. So, George, adding Field 1, along with things like knowledge management, it's an increasing list of things that I avoided with clients kind of at all costs because it wasn't great. So, along with knowledge management, these and field service, in certain industries, these are things that our clients were doing. They just weren't doing them with CRM, and now we can have the conversation. Hey, there's a great scheduling engine. There's a great field service module. That's great. So definitely keep us appraised of how the deployment goes. And everybody I've seen where we've shown it to them has been very enthusiastic about it. So it's good.
Yeah. This next week, I'll be looking more into what the portal capability offers as well. So, yeah.
I've been reading, there's been a series of articles on The Verge and on Forbes basically saying kind of officially Windows Phone is dead. Now,
that was my other story, yes.
Certain Windows Phone fans have been objecting, saying, hey, I can still buy it. It's got a whole million phone sales in the last quarter, some pitiful small number. So I want to get your take on it. Is Windows Phone dead?
In my opinion, for all intents and purposes, the customers that I've been seeing have either been very strong iOS or Android. In terms of the companies where they're bring your own device or they're instituted security policy kind of device organization. I truthfully have not seen any customers in my last 4 implementations that have been Windows Phones based.
Should we have a funeral?
I was never a big fan of Windows Phone whilst I did enjoy Windows Phone. Well, I enjoyed observing some of the features of Windows, like live tiles and so on. In the end of the day, I have to admit I never used Windows Phone, so by Microsoft.
Now, wait a minute. 3-4 years ago, you were at the MVP Summit and you went skiing and you lost your iPhone on some mountain somewhere. Didn't you have like a loaner Windows Phone to use after that?
No, I bought myself an Android brick, I think, for like $20 or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, if I'd love to see one of the features in, it's the feature that I have a spare phone, like $200 Android-based phone, Motorola one, and I used it for a while as my overseas phone because it does have support for multiple SIMs. So that's the feature I would love to see. And in fact, I know a lot of people who have a work phone and a private phone, and having both on one device would be terrific addition. But other than that, I'm firmly on iPhone, and I just upgraded to a bigger model Plus. So now it's like carrying half of my tablet. But I've got things like Power Apps. So I've been playing with Power Apps on it, so it looks terrific. And the sign, I think the writing was on the wall when Microsoft developers when they started delivering applications on iOS and Android first.
Right.
And that's how we'll get Windows Phone later.
And it was fully featured too. It wasn't like, partial functionality and then you get more on the Windows Phone. It was the full deal. Everything you're going to get on any mobile device, you're going to get on those platforms right away.
Yeah. So, and with advancements in cross-platform development, like with Xamarin libraries and so on, it's better to develop across multiple platforms with a single code base. And it's natural. You go where people are, where the money is. And Windows Phone managed to acquire 1-point-something% of the market share.
And I think, and I was a Windows Phone user for 5 years. It was ahead of its time in some ways, but the things that were revolutionary of it were quickly adopted by the competition, and or Microsoft took them out. So like Windows Phone 7 had some really, what I thought were cutting edge features in the way the apps were designed and the way they flowed. And I wish I could pin a TV series in Netflix to my start page. That was, and still that's unmatched. So you could have a pin to Star Trek if you wanted to and jump right to it. What they started to do, first of all, Microsoft started to standardize their apps on Windows Phone to be like their iOS and Android versions. Took some of those special touches out, and then then even Cortana being on other platforms now, there's no reason for a Windows Phone. My iPhone 6 Plus is as much of a Windows Phone as my Windows Phone ever was. There's one thing I miss, and that is the ability to pin things to the start screen. So, for example, when I moved 3-4 years ago now, I had the movers. I looked up their website and I pinned it to my start screen so I could call them very quickly just by pulling their website up. And so things like that, but again, it's not the gain I have is I can actually do online banking, I can actually rent a car, all those things that I couldn't do with my Windows Phone. And tying into the CRM aspect, this week the CRM team released the preview of the Cortana integration, and that Cortana integration now works on your computer, just like just like what they started with Windows Phone. And so even if Windows Phone is dead or extremely sick and on life support, you can have all the benefits. Chris Cognetta can be happy with his Cortana integration, even if Windows Phone goes away, because he can now use it on his Surface or other device that has Cortana on it.
Besides Microsoft moving towards the other platforms, just software developers were not willing to write apps for the Windows Phone store, given the small user population, and they just never could make traction with that. And the Nokia deal really didn't help things, in my opinion.
Right.
It kind of just exacerbated the situation.
Here's what I want to see. I love to be in an office where 5-6 people are talking to CRM. It would just be mayhem, where everybody's saying, CRM, create lead.
Yeah, much like when you do that with the Xbox.
Is great when you're all by yourself, sitting in your car, but it makes you look like an insane person if you're around other people. You look like a crazy guy walking down the street talking to yourself.
But it's interesting that you mentioned Cortana. The one of the interesting short articles I read a couple of days ago. I'm subscribed to Seth Godin. I wouldn't even call it a blog. It's like his daily thoughts. And one of the articles was called, or thoughts, was called 3D Printers, the Blockchain and Drones. And what I was talking about, I'll quote from it, so because it talks about the effectiveness of the demos and selecting stories for your demos. So the quote, most of the stories of Bitcoin haven't been about the blockchain. They've been about speculators winning and losing fortunes. And most of the stories of 3D printers have been about printing small useless toys, including little pink cacti. And most of the stories about home drones have been about peeping toms and cool videos you can watch after other people make them. So the advice is, quote, again, choose your stories carefully. What I've been thinking about after reading these is that, are we short-selling Cortana by doing pointless demos like CRM, create a new lead?
What would be the better story?
I don't know yet. I really don't know. But show me CRM, show me, bestsellers in North America. The amount of data typically in CRM exceeds the amount that can be passed through the conversation or explained verbally. Okay, create a new lead, possibly whilst you're driving, but engaging into meaningful conversation, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if I could say, Cortana, what appointments do I have in CRM next week, or Cortana, what opportunities are set to close in the next week, something like that would get. And it's a preview, and like anything else, Cortana's really, I think, has other purposes. On the surface, it's the voice dictation, but there's probably machine learning things and all the analytics stuff that go into it as well.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We need to get a better story, a better back-end story for Cortana before doing kind of demos that incidentally fail on a large stage from time to time. So
well, I mean, arguably Salesforce has had a long history of flashy but yet pointless features that they use to wow people that never really get used, such as chatter. It's high time we had some flashy, useless features as well that can wow people in demos but never be used.
Like resource management.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's introduce our special guest. Scott Sewell, also known as Captain Redlaces. Scott is the CRM mayor of New York City, I believe. Scott is a solution architect with our company, Hitachi Solutions. He's also a MVP for something like 7-8 years. Scott, how did you get the nickname Captain Redlaces?
Well, I have some dress shoes, and they had red laces on them, and for whatever reason, it just stuck. I actually was with a customer. That's probably been 2 years ago. We walked in the customer. He goes, "So what's the deal with the laces?" And I told him, I said, I really didn't know. I mean, it was just shoes that I'd bought. And he goes, "What's the deal with the red laces?" I said, "Well, it means that I'm willing to shed blood for the success of this project." He didn't actually respond, so I don't know if he believed me or if he knew I was joking. But we continued on the project. The project was a success. But
how many pairs of red laces exactly do you own? Because every time I see you, several times a year, you have a nice crisp pair, and you must iron them or something.
Yeah, you have to refresh them occasionally. I actually bought some off Amazon here lately because my last ones were looking pretty net ratty. So get me a fresh pair. I want to look sharp on them. Actually, I was at Serum UG back in the fall, and a guy walks up and goes, "Oh, that's why they call you red laces."
Right. So Scott, I asked you to come on here for a couple reasons. One is last time on episode 17, we had Daniel Kai from Kingswaysoft, and he was breaking the news about his brand new audit log tool, and you've actually used that in the wild. And I just kind of wanted to find out, because the question I had kind of still last week is, that sounds really cool, but I was having some trouble thinking of exactly the use case for it. So how have you used that, and where are you seeing that fitting in?
Yeah, I've been using it a ton lately, just for two specific purposes, three purposes. The first purpose, the first time I actually used it for a production issue was I had a user bulk update a bunch of records. That he had bulk updated a bunch of records in CRM in production. They didn't want that. They wanted all those changes. It was like they needed an undo button. And so I was like, aha. And I pulled down the audit logs, looked at all the records that had changed, found the items that had been changed to the new value that he had set everything to, and used the audit log will now show you the new value and the old value, as well as who made the change. So I just used that data basically to sort of like reversing out the change, reversing the transaction in some ways.
Okay.
So I updated the data back to where it was before he had made the bulk update. That took me just a few minutes to get all that out and back in. So that was pretty easy. Somebody asked me how I did. I said, well, I'm a wizard, man, So the other thing I've been using it for lately is I'm moving into the BI space more heavily these days. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm pulling down audits of our opportunity table and audits on the sales stage value, as well as the estimated value and estimated close date. Well, what I've been doing is pulling that audit of when did the sales stage change and how long was it between changes of the sales stage. And when it changed last, did the estimated value change at the same time, or the estimated close date? And in analysis services, you get this idea of a slowly changing dimension. In CRM, if I pull up Advanced Find and look at my opportunity table, I know exactly what the value of those opportunities are today. I can't say what was the value of my pipeline on Friday. So with this, I'm able to reverse out and say, okay, just show me the values that were still valid as of Friday, and show me what the pipeline looked like at that point. So that's the other thing that I'm currently working on. The last piece that I'm using it for, I was using it as a user audit to say, of the people we've trained, how many of them have made more than a few changes to a record? And the problem was one of our integrations overwrote the last modified date on these records. So you couldn't look at the CRM entities and just say how many people were the last person to modify these records, because that just gets wiped out once an integration hits it. So I pulled out all the changes and said, okay, over the last 2 weeks after go live, who's made changes to fields? What fields have they changed? What days did they make those changes to it? Just to see if we had gaps in our training, looking at who's using it. Do we have people who we train but they really haven't used the system yet, and maybe there's just additional training they need, or who's just jumped in, just torn loose and done a lot of updates. So it's really kind of giving us a feel for a very early test of our adoption. So
okay,
I'm using it for that. So I want to be careful.
In the last two scenarios you mentioned, the slowly changing variables for analysis services, as well as seeing who's making the most changes. In both those scenarios, are you taking the data and dumping it someplace else with Kingswaysoft and then analyze a report on it?
Yeah. I just drop it out to a local SQL database. Just download it to a local SQL table and use that as my source, and then either run Power BI against it, or in the case where I was doing updates, that was my source that I pushed back in through SSIS to update the records.
The other thing that you've been doing more work with is Power BI, and we've talked more theoretically about Power BI, about where it's useful. But as somebody who's actually using it, what is your what's your take on it? Where do you see Power BI as a good fit in the CRM, in the context of dynamic CRM, versus where might other tools be a better fit?
And George, I know that you've used Power BI. You had one of your customers using creating their own dashboards with Power BI already in a production environment. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Currently, my challenge for different customer is we hosting CRM for them. So there are reasons why they can't go CRM online, but challenge for me is how to connect Power BI to effectively on-premises CRM. So finally, solution is available. I'm going to write about it once I get moving parts into place. But I think there's an option even for CRM on premises to actually push the data, or rather for Power BI to connect and pull the data from your CRM on premises. So it looks very promising.
You're hitting the database directly, though, aren't you?
No, you're not hitting in real time, and you have to install a server-side component, Power BI component. It's very similar to what would you install on your local machine to provide feeds. Power BI would connect very similar to your server environment as well, so you do need.
But your data source is SQL. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be a SQL server, so it wouldn't be. It would be CRM, CRM data source.
Yeah. So Joel, to answer your question, I'm in both cases where I'm trying to run Power BI right now, it's on CRM online environments. I gotta qualify what I say about Power BI versus where do you see it going. Where it is right now is very early stages for CRM. I mean, the Power BI tool itself is iterating very, very quickly. They're updating it. They're putting a new release out each month. So the Power BI desktop and the Power BI online service iterating very, very quickly. Microsoft is just pouring amazing amounts of resources into the BI stack so that they can keep up with some of the smaller players that have really lapped them a couple of times. Where we've had with CRM in SSRS, man, those reports are really looking dated. They look like playing with SSRS reports. I think there will always be for a long time, there will be a need for SSRS for things that you lay out like a table, like a page, like a form, just sort of old school reports. But the dashboards and really the self-service side of BI, of reporting coming out of CRM, that's where we're headed, is Power BI as that main tool for building and consuming CRM data. That's where we're headed. Where we are right now is not quite there. For instance, the reason I was asking George about how he's using it, I connected Power BI to our CRM Online environment and just tried to use the sample solution sales dashboard that Power BI released. And if you download it, point it to a CRM Online with sample data, it pulls up this giant dashboard of a lot of different measures and graphs, and pointed it to a production environment, and it chokes out because of the volume of data. I'm only dealing with 7,000 opportunities, and it just chokes out. It can't handle it. It's not quite there. I talked with a Microsoft rep who's responsible for partner adoption of Power BI for CRM, and he said, "Yeah, I've been using it with my sample data. I've got more than 1,000 records in here." I'm like, "Dude, I got nearly 10 times that I'm looking at in not a very large organization." I think there's a difference between where we are right now and where we're going to be. And in some ways, I've been trying to dig into Power BI pretty heavily because I really started working on it in November time frame, thinking, I want to feel like I want to skate to where the puck is going instead of where it is. Right now, I feel like I'm even further and further behind just because the BI side to Microsoft is just accelerating really, really quickly.
The one thing that I hope that we're going to create a demo for as part of the training is real-time Power BI. There's been investments. I'm a hard man to impress with the demos. But when we were when we were in Seattle at the summit, we dashed into Azure Camp, and we've seen real-time Power BI streaming analytics with Power BI. Effectively, the guy had a demo with like 1,000, 2,000, I think, sensors feeding the data in real time, and Power BI consuming it in real time. And that was like jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
Really, really impressive. So the one thing that I would like to invest my time in is dig into these real-time analytics, because for larger organizations like with 10,000 or 20,000 opportunities, right? Imagine if you can put those in real time on a map and observe them in real time.
Let me explore what you're talking about there, George, because like this idea of streaming analytics, the streaming side, where you're talking about, of course, the buzzword of IoT, where you're looking at thousands of sensors across a factory floor, and all of that data flowing into Power BI. That stuff is amazing. It's really cool. I don't see that as being what you would necessarily get from CRM as a tool. Maybe that's an input to CRM. I don't know, but I don't really see that as CRM generating kind of that type of stream information.
Imagine the CRM organization with, say, 1,500 sales rep using Field 1 solution for dynamic, and these 1,500 reps, they creating opportunities, they're driving around, whatever, they closing, opening, whatever, and you can have an executive, dashboard with the map of the states of North America or whatever, of the world, if you will, if you really want to, and have an opportunities, reflecting that. Similar to what I have an idea.
Yeah, with that example, though, unless you get 1,500 reps all creating 100 opportunities a moment, every minute, I don't see that jumping into the volume of the streaming. I think
no. I'm not talking about.
I think you could with large call centers for activity metrics and things like that. But what's the difference when our experience with connecting to CRM being so pokey, and then this very fast, high quantity data? Is it simply the type of connection that the OData connection is slower?
So right now, and again, this is today versus where we're headed, right? So today, the Power BI OData link to CRM, it pulls as soon as it tries to connect and refresh. If you point it at a table with 100,000 records in it, and you say, I only am interested in the records that have changed today, right now, it pulls all 100,000 records down, and you sit there and wait on it and wait, and pull it down, and then it will filter out only to the records that are relevant for today. That's what we have at the moment. That's not going to be there. That's not going to be the case for a long time. Even today, there are some developers who've built some third-party things that sort of wrap around that and say, or sort of do an in-run around that and say, okay, let's point it to a view in CRM that is already filtered, and then we can pull that information into Power BI and get just the data that's changed today. Do something like that. Or, like I'm doing right now, which is not going to be again, it's not the long-term solution, but I'm pulling this down. I'm using the change data feature where I can say, just give me the changes of any data that's happened in the last 30 minutes since I pulled the data the last time. I can do that and then get a fresh copy of the data to refresh. The three of us are talking about just the plumbing pieces at the moment, which is not really the most interesting thing about Power BI. The most interesting thing about Power BI is how incredibly useful or flexible once you've set up those sources, and once you've set up, here's the data, here's kind of our tables that we want to expose to this manager's dashboard. Here's a bunch of metrics. There are a bunch of tables that are fairly flat, and you can, as a manager, you can build your own dashboards out of that very easily with just clicking and dragging. I mean, the UI is really, really nice for an end user to consume. They don't need IT to rebuild their dashboards for them like they would with SSIS or SSRS right now.
Right. Here's what I would like to see. I would like to see Power BI kind of replace the built-in chart engine in CRM, because I'll compare it to, SSRS, compare it to Bing Maps, things like that, where these other technologies are put in, but they make it seamless to users, and maybe it's not the deepest functionality. It can have, kind of like some of the Azure stuff where you get Azure functionality baked in to CRM Online. But then if you can go to Azure and you can extend that and build on that and things like that. I think it's getting closer, but it needs to be a way to do things in context of other records. For example, in context of a view, in context of a record, something similar to pre-filtering with SSRS, and make it so the charts you create are behind the scenes, just creating Power BI charts, if you will, and then give you the ability to extend that.
One piece that we don't have in Power BI that would be sort of the gap between those built-in charts and the Power BI charts right now is when you build a dashboard for, person X, and if you go through the OData feed and that person logs in and is pulling they're pulling the data based on who they are, then your entitlements are handled for that person's dashboard and for that person's data set. If you go to SQL directly, there are no entitlements available, so you can't say, if it's Sean logging in, Sean can see his opportunities, but he can't see what George's opportunities in the summaries and charts. That's one of the features that the built-in charts, the visualizations have, is they are natively built onto that entitlement within CRM, so that advantage there.
So basically, you can't make a Power BI dashboard in CRM that honors CRM security.
Correct, not yet.
And you can't handle that through an Excel template with a ODBC connection either.
If you're building a dashboard per person, or you're building a data set per person, I think you can get there using that. If you just point a general dashboard at CRM, you're probably going to have to point it with an administrator password.
If you went against the filtered views and had a worksheet that you refresh when you look at it, it would work that way. But for a Power BI dashboard, it's cached. It's caching the data.
It is.
And so you're basically running it for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so
exactly
that's
right.
you can't access that Power BI data real time through an Excel template.
Yeah, Power BI is you're exactly right. Power BI is cached that data locally to make it much faster.
Got it.
That's why it's so quick, and that's why the CRM dashboards, are limited to the volume that they're useful for. So,
and I think this slice and dice analytics is killer, and I think there's I'm thinking of sales managers. Sales managers love that kind of thing as a general rule. But the higher up you go, the more there still is that desire to have this pre-canned dashboard. Just show me what I want. Just show me what I need. You need both. You need the executive dashboard where typical executive vice president and the CEO typically aren't going to want to sit there and slice and dice the data.
Yeah, that's the customer
Unless
I'm
they're
at
lucky
right
to
now.
do that.
Yeah, that's the customer I'm at right now. Lots of very important people walking around. They all have people to do that kind of stuff for them. They basically say, Sean, get me a view of this, and this. And Sean comes back with a view of this, and this, and they say, no, that's not right. How about add this, and that other thing. And so Sean goes back and recreates it and fixes it and brings it back. But I think the people who will be using Power BI most, at least initially, are going to be Sean, I didn't mean to use you as a lackey. Sorry.
You just said Sean was not a very important person. I think
it is fine.
Sorry, dude. I was just saying.
I understood the context and the spirit that you meant it. It's
my
fine.
intent was that you were somebody who was working.
The bus.
Yeah, you were there working and serving your customers.
That's right. I'm an information worker. I'm an information worker, and I'm proud of it.
Exactly. So you have your information at your fingertips, and but I think that's the people who will tackle Power BI as far as actually using it for building and designing. And in this case, I'm really not thinking of IT people. I'm really thinking more analysts, business analysts in the business, as opposed, people who use Excel, Power Excel users.
What is the biggest competitor to Power BI you see now? Is it Tableau?
Tableau, and my customer currently is evaluating Power BI against Tableau and Qlik, which is QLIK, I think, or QLIC.
Right.
But Tableau by far. Yeah.
But the thing with Tableau is they've been proactive in doing things like making Dynamics CRM Online an official source and things like that too.
Right, and you can see that CRM is an official. I mean, even Power BI CRM is an official source as well. It's just not there. They're looking at Tableau and they're looking at Qlik, and you're seeing a CRM connector inside of Power BI, but that CRM connector at the moment, I don't think it scales to a large production environment.
Right.
It looks. Yeah, it's just not ready. I pointed it to a table that had time entries in it. So it had 400,000 records in it. I thought, okay, I'm going to narrow it down to like 4 columns that I'm interested in, and I'm going to eliminate all the columns of all the records where it was non-billable time, and narrow it down to about 70,000 records. And then my wife had dinner ready for me. So I hit go, and I walked away and went to dinner and came back, and it was still running. And so we went and watched a TV show and fell asleep on the couch, woke up the next morning, came in, it was still running. It had downloaded 14 gigs of data from CRM Online, and it still had not finished downloading that table. So it was like, that's not going to work.
So you use Power BI and you get dinner, a movie, and a good night's sleep.
Absolutely. Power BI and chill.
All time, right?
Yes, exactly.
Conversations I'm having with clients now, for the more minor reports, I'm encouraging people to at least try the Excel templates, because the main reason they work on mobile. That's the big thing, that go SSRS. You can use this any place but mobile.
I think SSRS will always be with us for a while at least, because Power BI is not really, you wouldn't run a Power BI report to print out a call sheet for
There's some really interesting things in SSRS 2016, though. It's kind of like they're coming together. I think instead of SSRS going away, I think they'll come together. SSRS 2016 is mobile friendly. Now the question is Microsoft going to make that work with CRM?
Well, you can drop an SSRS report onto a Power BI dashboard now in 2016. So there's some really cool stuff happening in that area.
Is that like, when you have a fruit tree and typically just before it dies, it blooms, like insanely blooms.
Yeah.
Right? So,
sort of the swan song sort of idea.
Yeah, the last breath of SSRS. But look, from where I sit, a lot of our customers that we have CRM for, they love emailed reports. This Uber boss you were talking about that kept running Sean around, instead he would ask Sean to create a report and say, I want this report on my desk every morning.
Yes.
Even though this report is like one click away, 80% of bosses above certain level, they don't click.
Yeah.
The only thing they click around is email, and I want it as PDF. And that's it, right? So a lot of our customers have those reports as emailed PDFs.
Yeah, and one of my customers, they absolutely wanted to have a report emailed to him every day. So every day we emailed him a link to the report. And so every day he got a copy of it, and he was happy. We were happy because we didn't, we weren't generating PDFs for him. My standard response on that is that everybody wants CRM email notifications to them until they start getting them.
Right.
And then they start going, it's just a bunch of spam. So
this reminded me, you just reminded me to talk about email overload. I just thought of my favorite Office or Outlook quick action button I made. You're all familiar with the quick actions, how you can create a button that does a certain action?
Yeah.
I have a send email to Scott Sewell 5 times button, And
That's
so,
nice.
yeah, so it's like it has the same command: forward to Scott Sewell, forward to Scott Sewell, forward to Scott Sewell. It's kind of my secret weapon, just in case. Just in case, it's kind of like Batman in the bottom of the Batcave has the big pile of kryptonite, just in case Superman gets out of hand. That's my anti-Scott Sewell weapon.
Yeah, you might label that one "Give Scott an aneurysm," but actually, one of the great Outlook add-ins is the Disable Reply All button. Have you seen that one? It's from Microsoft Labs.
That's fantastic.
It's Microsoft Labs. You install it, and it puts in the ribbon of your email a button that says Disable Reply, or Disable Reply All, or Disable Forward. Now, obviously, it's really only valid as long as you're sort of in a exchange environment. But if you send an email out and say, little are replied to me if you're interested, you know that you can almost name the people who are going to do a reply all to that email. So I always use that plugin.
Oh,
so it disable reply all.
It
just disable the button. It should graze out the button for reply all when the person receives it.
It probably doesn't stop them from doing it on their phone or something.
Yeah, there's some ways around it. I mean, obviously, it's only, I guess it's for like Outlook is probably most likely where they'll hit it, and it doesn't. Obviously, there's always some ways to get around it, but it at least disables the knee-jerk reaction of just hit reply all to a big mailing list.
Well, Captain, we appreciate you joining us. Hey,
well, it's been a pleasure.
Before you go, Sean, can you go get Captain Redlaces some coffee?
Right away, sir.
Service-oriented right there.
That's what I'm all about, helping others. I'm a giver. What can I say?
He's gonna
white glove service
coffee.
Right there.
That's right.
White glove service. Dubinsky, it's good to talk to you. I hope you're doing well.
Yep, and hope that your town clear of snow these days.
It's clearing off. It's a lovely town. It's a lovely day. It was in the 50s today, so.
Good to hear from you, and we'll talk more about Power BI. Definitely.
Sounds great. It's the place to be.
All right, Sean, you said you had another news story?
Yeah, one quick one. It was announced that the user group Day 1 is going to be a part of Envision this year, and the registration links are available on the user group sites. So for CRM, it would be crmug.com/day1, and you can register for that. Participate in all the same kind of functions that were in convergences of the past. Not sure whether or not this will continue forever, but it's definitely going to be a part of Envision this year.
Do we have any tool recommendations for this week?
Personally, this week I would have to stick with PowerShell and say PowerShell library for CRM. It's a PowerShell add-on for CRM that's been developed by a couple Microsofties. It's available on GitHub. I've been posting tips of the day with the samples using PowerShell. Just this morning, I posted another tip. You know how people ask, how do we migrate knowledge base articles from the old format to the new one, particularly considering that the new one is going to supersede and the old format is going to be deprecated. This morning I spent like half an hour and I put together a script that basically copies all the articles from old format to the new one. It's a sample, but nevertheless, it's like, I like the interactivity that I don't have to go into Visual Studio or anything like that. I fire up, say import this module and then fire away. It takes time to get used to it. I mean, PowerShell is very complex language. It's robust, very interesting language. There are some concepts that takes time to get used to. I'm getting better. I'm nowhere near as good as some people are, so I'm just a beginner as far as PowerShell is concerned. But nevertheless, I'm enjoying it, so I would say that PowerShell, or particularly CRM add-on for PowerShell is my tool recommendation.
PowerShell is extremely powerful for doing things like automating administrative tasks and other things. I've had several clients who have basically used PowerShell to automate their entire, for example, dev environment refresh process for CRM on premises. But it seems like people are either all PowerShell or no PowerShell. You're not just kind of PowerShell. People who are PowerShell fans seem to do everything via PowerShell.
I hear you, but I hope that developers will find time to learn just a bit of PowerShell, because until recently, when I had to do some simple tasks like, let's say, copying records from A to B, and even importing records would have been, sometimes it's easier rather than handcrafting, an Excel and then editing. Sometimes it's just faster to write 10 lines of code and be done with it. Those are occasions when I tend to go to PowerShell these days. And moving knowledge base articles is a perfect example. I can create a PowerShell. It will be like, if I work on it, it will be like all up 20 lines long. We'll create knowledge base articles, copy them from A to B, publish if required, and all sort of stuff. Fidelity is preserved, versioning if you need to add it, and so forth. So that's my ad hoc tool that I use when I have to do some coding, but I really don't feel like, firing up new project in Visual Studio, connecting to CRM and all sort of stuff. So,
where do you get started with PowerShell? If you're a CRM administrator wanting to use PowerShell but you have no exposure to it, how did you get started with it?
Okay, there are two aspects to it. One is PowerShell library that comes with CRM SDK. This library is mostly for administration. That's the one probably you're referring to, where you can manipulate your environment, where you can provision new, say, CRM instance using deployment services and so forth.
Changing organization settings, for example.
Yeah. That's the one for administrators. The one I'm referring to is CRM add-on library, or add-on library for CRM. It's basically a set of PowerShell utilities that open up the entire CRM SDK for you. With the rare exceptions, I think they support like all of the messages, all of CRM messages. So you can create records, you can update records, you can search, you can fire up fetch XML, you can manipulate settings, you do whatever you want to do. So that becomes more of an alternative to something like C# environment and command line and interface application that you would create using C# connecting to CRM and doing something. So you wouldn't create an interactive applications necessarily. So it's more towards the automation or ad hoc short scripts. So for that, I would recommend, well, first of all, there are massive resources as far as PowerShell is concerned. So you need to know the basics of the PowerShell, the syntax. For example, you may be tempted to write if A equal B and you put like equal B, and it doesn't work in PowerShell. PowerShell syntax is minus EQ A minus EQ B. That's the syntax of the expression. So you need to know kind of basics of the syntax, basics of the expressions, and then basics of the pipelining, because pipelining is big in PowerShell. So you retrieve CRM records, then you pipe them into the change script, and then you pipe them into update script. So you do it kind of seamlessly, and that's what PowerShell is good at. So I'd say start with learning just some of the basics of PowerShell, and then use that and use the samples that come with this library. Just poke around, just try to do some small tasks.
Right.
Small tasks like pull the record, change something, put it back. Just very, very simple until you get comfortable with the syntax, until you get comfortable with some CRM specifics. Like, for example, you can't just assign a status code. Status code equal 1 doesn't work. What you need to do is status code equal new option set minus value space 3 or something like that,
if you had an SDK operation you were going to do and you had the choice to do it through PowerShell versus C#, what's your criteria for deciding which way to go?
Probably mostly how durable the operation is, how complex it is. Do I need to apply a very complex logic? Do I need to branch out and so forth? If I do need to do that, like branch out my logic and perform some complex manipulations and maybe invoke interactivity, like if I do need to ask users some questions and even if it's yes, no answers, then probably C# would be my choice. If I do need just perform some basic data manipulations, some retrieve some records or update some records, the example I gave yesterday was suppress the yellow bar notifications about new knowledge base articles. That needs to be done programmatically. It's literally 2 lines in PowerShell. I wouldn't fire up Visual Studio. I wouldn't write C# code to do that because it's very straightforward. So change CRM organizational settings, change something in a single record where it's ad hoc, then I probably use PowerShell to manipulate data. Or if I need to automate manipulation of the entire CRM environment, like you gave an example, migrating from development to production, all the settings, redeployment, and the rest, like importing solutions and the rest, I would do it in PowerShell because then I can bring in other PowerShell libraries, like I can bring Azure, I can bring, for example, SQL Server PowerShell libraries, so I can do backup restore of my SQL databases, and so on, so on. And the best example probably would be the sample we did have it on CRM Tip of the Day a couple of weeks ago, where we wrote a PowerShell to create non-interactive user automatically. So it involves manipulation in Office 365, and it involves some manipulations on CRM side. You know the drill. When you create a user, grant a license, assign a role, change to non-interactive, go back to Office 365, remove the license.
Right.
We wrote a PowerShell which does that. So if you, for example, an integrator or implementer who does that frequently, you might as well write a PowerShell script.
So it's repetitive. It's repetitive tasks. It's multi-step tasks. If you just needed to ad hoc import a solution, most likely you just do it through the normal way of importing it. But
Correct.
If it's a solution that needs to be moved once a week, let's move the latest build from environment A to environment B. That's worth automating and will save a lot of time in the long run.
Correct. Or when other systems are involved. Like,
right.
For example, you wouldn't manipulate Office 365 users in C#. Whilst it's easy to do in PowerShell because there are live PowerShell libraries. So admin tasks, repetitive tasks, or ad hoc coding tasks. I'd say that's my choice today. The PowerShell would be my choice today to do these, all of these.
Okay, great. Well, this brings us to the end of episode 18. Hard to believe we've had 18 episodes already, and thanks again to Kingswaysoft for once again sponsoring our podcast.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy Chicago, Joe, and Sean, enjoy sunshine in Florida.
You betcha. Take care.
This has been CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast. You can hear previous episodes on our website, crm.audio. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio, or leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/CRM podcast. If you have any topic suggestions or questions that you would like for us to answer on a future episode, please drop us an email at voice@crm.audio. Special thanks to Dale Simmons for our theme music. Go check out his website, dalesimmons.com. Please join us next time on CRM Audio.